Try one! Yo, Natsu here. This is going to be a what if to try and start again at YouTube. Because, like you mostly saw, I haven't uploaded in quite a while. At first it was because YouTube was literally just being shit to me and didn't let me upload, or saying that my stuff was corrupted. So this time, let's hope it works. This is going to be what if deku could go to purgatory. So for those who don't know Seven Deadly Sins, well, the later seasons of it, or the later part of the manga, purgatory is basically hell. A single second on Earth, or whatever the realm you're in happens to be named like. Basically, a single second there is an entire year in purgatory. Which means that if you go there, normally if you spend more than a minute there from the outside, you've aged 60 years. Deku will not age. Secondly, purgatory is, like I said, hell, basically. So, the temperatures are so hot that your skin will melt off your body, or so cold that you will basically freeze to death in a matter of minutes. Yes, Deku will have to endure that. Last thing is that the air is extremely hard to breathe in because, well, first, it can either be extremely hot or extremely cold to the point of burning your lungs or freezing them, as well as, well, since it's basically a land of fire and magma, there's a lot of toxic stuff in the air. Since Deku doesn't age, he will be able to train there for basically forever without actually having that much problem. So, yeah. But he still gets damaged, so you'll see what I have planned for that. Another thing is that, even though I asked on Discord, because I forgot to ask on YouTube, I didn't get an answer for that at first, so I asked another my friend by text, and he decided to tell me that I should give Deku one for all. Since the reason he's going to start training in purgatory is because of All Might, so it would be weird for him not to give him one for all anyway. So let's start with the what if. Deku is born quirkless, but they don't know that. While he aged, Deku basically just grows up like a normal kid until he's about 3.5. Around that time, at one point, someone basically showed their quirk and told them that if they could use their quirks right now, what would they want them to be? And Deku basically decided to think about it and said, if only I could activate it. And basically, he just tried to think of anything. So, lasers, fire breath, the same power as her mom, or a huge other amount of things. But one in particular was teleportation, which activated, well, something inside of him that basically sent him to purgatory. For everyone in the outside world, it was basically instant. But for Deku, it was about 2 seconds of pure agony before in his mind he just said he wanted to go. He just thought, go back. And basically send him back. Basically basically for everyone, what they saw was Deku standing there and being just fine, and suddenly, without even changing the way he was suddenly burned all over the body and nearly dead. They brought him to a hospital, basically tried to help him. When he was able to talk again, they basically asked him. Well, basically they found someone with a healing type quirk, not to recover Gil, but someone who was a bit better. And basically, they were able to heal him, leaving only some scars on his body, mostly a big scar on his face. Think of it like, how can I say this? Think of Tanjiro's scar. A big scar above the eye on the same side as Todoroki. That was the only thing that wasn't able to be healed perfectly for some reason. Which, my explanation is actually that part was basically plunged straight into lava right before he decided to go back, which basically ripped the skin itself away instead of just burning it. So when he healed, well, a scar formed instead of just skin forming back. Basically, it was the most damaged part of his body, so yeah. When they asked him, he just said that he tried to think of many things and basically thought of teleportation, and at the same time he suddenly just saw an entire other thing in front of him that was basically fire and lava and mountains with monsters. He saw that, felt hurt, and came back basically instantly, which they basically thought, okay, yeah, he just basically got sent there and he came back, because he just said it was a few seconds. They didn't think, oh, there's a time dilation. So he's going to learn of that later. They basically told him that he should never use his quirk, which is not a quirk. Basically, what it is, he has the little gates for purgatory inside of him. He was born with that. Not as a quirk, just it was there. He has full access to it. That means he can go there or come back at any times he wants, just by thinking it. He could send other people there, which he's not going to do because he doesn't know he can, and won't do it except one time. Just you're going to understand at that point. But yeah. And basically, he's going to have a lot of training. After that day, people didn't bully him for being quirkless. They just felt pity for him because his quirk is literally a quirk that's made to damage himself. So Bakugo still bullies him, but just saying he has a useless quirk that only hurts him and can't do anything to help him. Deku still wants to be a hero, but he's not being told by people he can't this time, because he still has a quirk, quote unquote. So they basically just bully him in a different way, but it's a lot less mean. That continues until, well, the day of the slush villain attack. Everyone still laughs at Deku when he wants to go to UA, but no, nobody laughs at Deku when he says he wants to go to UA because he still has a quirk. But Bakugo still tells him that he shouldn't go there. In the same way, just because he would be useless and die probably just in the entrance exam. He does the same thing to Deku's notebook. Deku leaves, goes through the same, well, he still goes through the tunnel. The difference only comes when he asks All Might a simple question. He basically asks, can someone who cannot use his quirk be a hero? Which actually intrigued All Might a bit, but All Might decided to tell him that no, he can't if he cannot use his quirk. He then explained about the injury and left, without actually asking about the quirk itself, thinking I have to go put the villain, well, at the police. That's when he basically found out that he lost it. Just like in the original, Deku basically leaves, goes towards where there were explosions, does the same thing to try and save Bakugo, and basically All Might goes and does the same speech to Deku, telling him he can be a hero. But then he tells him that he needs to know one thing though. What does he mean by cannot use his quirk? He didn't ask before because he actually thought he had something important to do, but now he's all ears. And Deku explains that his power brought him to a place where it was basically fire, lava, hell everywhere, and that he saw a couple of weird beasts that he thought were monsters. He only stayed there for like a second or two, but his entire body was almost broken to the point he would have died. Then pointed to the scar on his forehead and basically said, that's basically from there. That's the only thing on my body that didn't heal. Which All Might was interested. He thought of it a bit and told him that maybe it's not that his quirk in itself damaged him, but that his body wasn't ready to basically take it. So he wants to train Deku for a while before giving him one for all and then another thing. Deku in this one trained a bit because he still had a quirk and not as much bullying was done on him. It's just Bakugo still tried to put him down, but Deku trained in this one. Not monumentally, just enough that he doesn't need the 10 months entirely to basically get one for all. He only needed about 4 before All Might thought he could be ready. Not because Deku cleaned the entire beach, just the area All Might had decided for him. So he still did a good job and impressed All Might. All Might gave him one for all, told him to wait a bit, and said that he had someone that he wanted to present Deku. It was an old friend that knows his secret about one for all. When she arrived, all Deku saw was an old granny, and asked who she was. All Might said that she was someone that worked at UA. And she's an old hero called Recovery Girl. which then made Deku go into basically fanboy mode for a while, until she asked, okay, so what specifically is the thing you want me to do with him? You said he will need me to help because of his quirk, but what is it exactly? All Might then basically told Deku that he wanted him to use his quirk. Just go there and try to last as long as you can. Then come back. She will heal you. You will basically take a breather until you're back with enough energy to basically do stuff, and then go back. All Might wants him to basically try to see if he can build up an endurance. Like, what if his quirk is basically a training zone? A place where his body will be able to adapt and stuff. So Deku basically does that for about... Well, he basically stayed there for like 4 minutes before his body basically hurted way too much. His body didn't burn up as much this time though. He didn't land basically next to lava. And it was during the shifting time. Before it became freezing cold, but still close enough to it that it wasn't like fire hell where everything will die from it. So he was able to stay there for about a few minutes where it was hurting a lot. Then it was cooling down, cooling down, cooling down. He was looking around until suddenly it started getting really cold. Deku was having a lot of problem breathing also because, toxic air, I'm not sure if it's exactly that, but there is a lot of problems with the air. So he came back. From the outside, Deku basically pops out and pops back in and basically looks burned but also freezing a bit. So Recovery Girl healed him. All Might asked him what happened, and Deku started to explain that he stayed there for about 4 minutes, and All Might stopped him there and asked, wait, 4 minutes? It's not even been you didn't even leave. You were just hurt suddenly. Which made them realize that that place goes faster. Deku was still exhausted since Recovery Girl healed him, but then explained about it was a lot less hot than before, and over time it was cooling down a bit. Until it became okay, and then suddenly started to freeze up. All Might basically thought, so it's a fiery place as well as cold? Which Deku thought maybe it's the day-night cycle in that place, since, at night it's normally colder. And Deku does have brains, so yeah. All Might basically told him that he wants him to train by doing that constantly until he gets used to the heat. If he can. If before the entrance exam nothing changed, he will basically accept that, okay, it might be a bad idea. So now Deku basically, his routine was training a bit, then going to purgatory, there trying to hold as long as possible and try to train one for all, basically see if he could use it. Which most of the time was basically just him punching once, not being able to move his arm anymore, waiting to try and see if he can adapt, and then go back to get healed. Basically, he was doing that, then sleeping for an entire hour, almost. All Might forcibly waking him up where he was still exhausted but a bit better, Sending back Deku there, and basically do that day in and day out constantly. Every time recovery goal could be there. And basically what it did was that Deku was building up a resistance to both the hot and the cold. He still had a lot of problems with his lung burning up and freezing up, but by the 8-month mark, Deku was able to stay there for about 1 or 2 hours without problems before he started to really be in trouble. Basically, his stamina running out. But thanks to that, he was also able to train One for All a lot more. Yes, because his body was constantly exhausted, it had problems, but at one point, Deku decided that, you know what? I'm going to stay there even if my body burns up. I'm going to stay there even if I freeze. I don't care how bad it gets, I will stay there until I am on the verge of death, and then come back. He didn't tell it All Might and Recovery Go, though, and basically went there for almost an entire day. It hurted a huge amount. He was in pain constantly. His body was being destroyed. But he basically decided to think, no, I have to stay. Even if I'm on the verge of death, as long as my body can recover, I don't care. And basically just stayed like that. Something was happening inside of his body though. Every time he was in purgatory, because he didn't age but his body still produced more cells, they were basically adapting instead of making him age. So instead of destroying themselves and becoming weaker and weaker over time because he was aging, they became stronger and stronger instead. In fact, just his strength alone was a lot greater. And while he was in there, he kind of got the use and thought of the percentage for One for All. He wasn't yet able to put it around his entire body because he didn't think of it, but he knew he could at least take the percentage. The amount he could use was about 8% by the end of the 10 months of training. It was greater than, well, a while for Deku. The only reason it was that low was because he didn't actually train One for All in his body in itself. He trained his resistance, which his entire body basically gained a huge amount of it. In normal fire, Deku could almost touch it without problem. His body would still burn, but it didn't feel that hot to the touch in itself. In fact, the pain of fire was more or less gone from his body being so used to it that he knows it's hurting him, but it's a bearable pain, just like freezing. But in contrast, now he can stay the entire night in the freezing cold without problem there. He can breathe with a lot of hardship, but he can still breathe. His body is adapting faster than anything could have hoped for. Yes, Ban basically took him a few 100,000 years or so. 100 or thousands of years or so, just to be able to stand there without burning up. But let's just say Deku's body basically healed fast and didn't need the immortality. So yeah. Also, it's not like he's fully immune, it's more like he's freezing but he's able to survive it, more than he's freezing but he will never die from it. That's only going to happen later. Before the end of the 10 months though, All Might did give him one rule, because they never tested how much the time dilation is. In fact, at some point they just thought that, okay, yeah, as long as you're there, basically here no time passes. That's what they thought at some point. Until Deku basically spent like 2 or 3 days there, came back and just basically thought maybe it's not that time is stopped, and just that the time dilation is really, really long. And that I should probably spend a few years there to know. But All Might told him he doesn't want him to do that. He doesn't want Deku to use years. Even if it's for training, that could be bad for his body. Because they don't know yet that he doesn't age there. They just think that because he only spends a few hours there and that recovery girls heals him after, it basically doesn't change anything. So yeah. But the day before the entrance exam, Deku decided to do something that would be considered stupid by everyone's standards. Recovery Girl did go and see him for that because he basically told her that he wanted to try something without All Might. He told her he wanted to try and spend an entire year or more there. She said it was completely stupid, but that if he was able to come back, she would heal him. Deku said thank you and went. While he was there, Deku still needed to drink, but basically what he... Oh, no. While there, Deku doesn't need to drink or eat, but he can still do it. Basically, it's like all of the body functions don't need to be done for him. He can still eat and still feels hunger, but he doesn't need it to actually survive. He doesn't know it, so he basically starts to stay there for a while. After a few days, like I said, it hurts a lot, but it's bearable. And he's exploring a lot. He started using one for all on his legs to basically move around and saw a lot of monsters. Most of them were massive and black, or smaller ones that move in herds, or other big ones that basically acts differently. The ones that seem to be dark, well, completely dark, seem to only want to fight, while the other ones seem to actually be living. So basically that was just happening. At some point he tried to hunt one of the smaller monsters, but he never was able to catch them. Time was passing, and basically at some point he just realized something. He stopped counting the time he was there. But his body was hurting less and less. He was adapting to it. He was still hurt a lot, but he was recovering. When he was sleeping though, he had some problems about feeling problems. And basically he decided to just go back at that point. When he came back out, Recovery Girl looked at him weirdly. She said he was gone for about 3 seconds, which means 3 entire years in there, but Deku only remembers about 2, which made Deku realize that, whoa, an entire year is about a second out here. So it's not that time has stopped. It's just that the other world is moving way, way too fast. He basically told her how long he felt he stayed there. And she just felt anger. Because she told him, okay, but only about 1 year. Because All Might told him not to stay too long. But then she said that he didn't actually age. He just looks normal. After he healed her, there was also another thing that was discovered. He was not as exhausted as he thought he would be from her healing him. Which was actually because his stamina actually increased a lot, as well as the strength of his body. She decided to tell him not to do that again. She won't tell it All Might unless something important came up, but not to do it again. Which Deku basically just thought to himself, yeah, I'm going to try. So, yeah. The next day he starts to go for the entrance exam. You know what? No, that's going to be in part 2. In part 2 I'm going to do the entrance exam and most likely the test with Aizawa. So, Deku has one for all. Since he literally didn't train it at all and didn't try to increase the percentage he can, even though now he could probably use it at like a few 10, 20 easily. But he doesn't know that yet. Also, the strength of One for All increased over time simply with his own strength increasing, so that also makes it harder for him to use it. So yeah, hope you liked it. Leave a like if you did. If you have any comments, put them in the comment section or join the Discord. That's going to be in a link in the description. You can talk to me there. Most of the time I'm connected, except when I'm sleeping, but that's another story. So yeah, hope you liked it. Natsu out.